Hey guys, it is the 125th day of Russia's invasion into Ukraine, and you continue to show up, you continue to pray, and you can continue to care. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for just your continued prayers and support, and for sharing and liking and making shares public, continuing to keep before the world's eyes God's heart in Ukraine. Guys, so much is going out about the devastation and the things the enemy plans for Ukraine. But we can't pray from a place of hope. We can't begin to believe and partner with what God's doing unless we see in real time what God is doing in the midst of this dark place. So thank you. You're making a difference. Today, on this 125th day, we are seeing real movement forward, even as we're seeing in some ways, the death rattle of Russia's army. Russia has only been able, after 2 months of pressing, able to take Severodonetsk, but they've done it by cannibalizing 6 entire armies and using the remnants to basically bomb out of existence and roll in. What they took over with Severodonetsk isn't even a city. And so increasingly what we're seeing is that Russia is using artillery and missiles because they don't have men. And so they're firing at will. And what's happening is, statistically, what we're seeing is the vast majority of these are targeting civilian targets, particularly in Kharkov, we're seeing, and hospitals and kindergartens. Why? So we're really left with 2 choices. One is that the Russians simply, their munitions are not able to be targeted, or 2, their people don't have the ability to target. But statistically, if that were the case, they would still hit more military than civilian targets. Instead, the vast majority of what they're shooting at, I mean well north of 90%, is civilian targets. Why are they doing this? For one simple reason: terror. They are attempting to terrorize a populace. They don't want the Ukrainian people. They want the Ukrainian land. That's why they're totally fine with wiping Severodonetsk off the map and taking over the ruins that remain. The same thing as people are flooding back into Kharkov, even as the shells begin to fall. This counters everything that Russia's been trying to do. Russia wants to take Kharkov. Kharkov is the 2nd largest city in Ukraine, and it is a gem that they attempted from the very first days of the war, because it's just kilometers from the Russian border. It's predominantly Russian speaking. It seemed like an easy no-brainer to be able to take, and yet, after all but surrounding, about 80% surrounding the city, the Ukrainians pushed back, and now the Russians just barely have a foothold to the northeast of the city, and from which they are firing artillery left, right, and center. But there are signs in these days that Russia is planning an all-out assault to attempt to take Kharkov, to get something for the amount of loss that they've spent. So if we're going to pray effectively to that, we've got to be encouraged. Again, one of the things that happened yesterday was Russia bombed. A missile took out a crowded shopping mall in the city of Kremenchuk. 1,000 people were in there. The miracle is that only about 20 people died. Guys, again and again and again, we see massive Russian devastation and yet minimal loss of life. When they're taking out apartment buildings, they're taking out hospitals, they're taking out kindergartens. Some of that is due to an incredible response of people responding to air raid sirens and early warning systems of the Ukrainians, but it still doesn't add up. The limited loss of life, yes, there has been horrific loss of life, but considering the amount of munitions Russia has used in this war, and targeting civilian infrastructure, the limited loss of life is unbelievable. God is protecting the weak. Continue to pray for the weak. Pray for people who have wisdom of when to go and what not to do, and so on and so forth, because this is crucial as Russia continues to target civilian things. But there's been great things. We prayed for bloodless resolution. In Bryansk, there was a huge explosion about 20 kilometers or 10 kilometers from the Sumy border, and in a village. You don't have a huge explosion in a village unless you have huge explosive things, aka munitions dump. Again, also in Lugansk, using HIMARS, they were able to hit a garrison about 40 kilometers from the front. Russia is having to more and more stockpile weapons and stage troops further and further from the front because Ukraine is hitting more and more targets. But they're not just hitting them; they're hitting. We're seeing like trains within Russia that are being derailed, full of supplies. We're seeing all kinds of things because it's both people in occupied territories as people within Russia who do not want this war. We're seeing in Izium, there was an attempt by the Russians to cross the Severodonetsk River again. They were repelled. Also in the process, the Ukrainians shot down a helicopter. In Odessa, there was an attempt to shoot with Onyx missiles. These are incredibly accurate missiles to 1.5 meters, and yet the Ukrainians were able to shoot them down. But Russia continues to attack. One of the things they've done is they've been attacking grain. They attacked huge grain fields and grain warehouses in the last 24 hours. But the support only increases. I mean, for Russia to hit, Russia declared we were actually aiming at there was a military target, and the mall was empty. Guys, you can see it. The thousands of people milling around. You can see the people. You can see this is an active, nice mall that was hit. But on top of that, you can see not a single military target was around it. Russia is attempting to intimidate the population. Basically, Putin is acting as a terrorist. And the world had no problem dealing with Gaddafi in this way. No, let's turn. Let's let the world continue to deal with Putin in this way. And so as a result, NATO and the G7 has said, absolutely, we continue to stand with Ukraine. This is an atrocity. This is not okay. That's good. One of the things they pushed, and this is an interesting thing to pray, is they pushed for price caps because Russia, and particularly Putin, has been able to stay in this war because up to this point, since the war began, he's had $93 billion that have come into the country as a result of oil and gas exports. Well, the U.S. has said, how about this? Instead of demanding an embargo worldwide, right? Because we understand people need gas and oil. You can have gas and oil from Russia if you buy it at $40 a barrel. I haven't looked at the crude prices. Last time I checked, they were about $120 a barrel. $40 a barrel is below cost to produce. In other words, Russia is selling at a loss. And so the world gets cheap oil and Russia suffers. And so they're really pushing this. They're kind of gentle with it right now. They're saying, hey, how about it, guys? But if they can get enough countries on board, they'll probably introduce secondary sanctions. In other words, anybody who doesn't participate will end up sanctioned. And those have been incredibly effective. So pray that they're able to find partners throughout the world that go, yeah, let's get on board with this. Cheap oil for us and make Russia suffer. This provides a huge olive branch to India. India has become a massive consumer of Russian oil. It allows them to continue to get Russian oil on the cheap and yet seem to be supporting the war effort. So that's a huge thing. So pray for that. Another interesting thing that we're seeing is in Buryatia. So Russia has been mobilizing troops from impoverished and rural areas because these tend to be more easily motivated by patriotic propaganda, but also they have fewer options financially, and so serving in the military makes sense. And so as a result, Buryatia is a ethnic area, the Buryat people there. They have been out a massive amount of people have been mobilized from that area. And the people there are finally speaking out. And the wives of the Buryatia soldiers are saying, send our husbands home. Send our husbands home. Send our husbands home. I've said it throughout. Within Russia, the wives and mothers of soldiers are a voice that has to be heard. The mothers of the Moskva that sank, they have to have a voice. And so pray that their voice would go forth and would be heard, because there's no propaganda in the mother of a soldier. It's simply lives. And nobody can argue with the moral value of a mother of a soldier. So pray for that. A neat thing too is the Baykar, that's the drone making company in Turkey. Once again, the people raised enough money to buy 3 of those drones. They said, keep the money, give it to those who are in need. We'll just give you those 3. They continue to do that. They continue to give these drones. These drones are so key to what Ukraine is able to do. So praise God for that, those kind of real support. And continue to pray for continuing support. But what I really want us to focus on 3 areas, because Kherson is really struggling. Russia, recognizing they cannot find collaborators, are turning the screws to 11, even as they are attempting to turn the entire region into a ruble zone. They're handing out 10,000 rubles to anybody who will take it. They're seizing Ukrainian banks. They arrested the mayor of Kherson. They are doing their best they're trying desperately to find anybody they can buy, bribe, intimidate to partner with them, and they're not finding it. Guys, the people within the occupied territories are suffering. We're not seeing it because it's behind enemy lines. But guys, please continue to pray the word gets out of what is happening to those in occupied territory, so that the world will never consider allowing Russia to hold on to these territories. In Lysychansk, the governor of Lugansk, Haidar, has said and he's made this statement is, so one thing you need to understand, Severodonetsk was relatively flat. Lysychansk, on the other side of the river, is on a 500-foot bluff. The territory, the actual land, is very difficult to seize, and that's what the Russians are discovering. They're attempting to come from the south and the southwest, and they are making incremental progress at massive cost. And this has been our prayer over and over again with these cities of Severodonetsk and Lysychansk, is that it will make the Russians waste their munitions for no result, and that they would just waste them and there would be little result. And continue to pray for that, because also pray for those weapons that we've been talking about, the Panzerhaubitz 2000 from Germany, the Caesar guns from howitzers from France, and more of the HIMARS and the M270s to reach the front as quickly as possible. But also pray this NASAM system that we talked about, the kind of a similar to the Patriot system for anti-missile, aircraft systems, after what happened in Kremenchuk, that they will rush those not just to the cities of Kyiv, but also to Kharkov and to so many of the other areas close to the front, because Russia is doing their best to bomb out of existence. So pray for Lysychansk to be able to hold, and because every day they hold devours more and more of the Russians' war capacity. And one of the things we're seeing is there's another key deficit the Russians are having is in senior military personnel. They fired for, I think we're on the 3rd or 4th general over the what are called the desantniki, the airborne, are considered the elite of the military, and those are the Marines. Those are the ones who are going in at the front. Those are the high-powered, special forces. We're on our 3rd or 4th general, and the latest general obviously was brought in from the back of beyond, where he was enjoying his retirement to excess. This gentleman is it looks like well over 400 pounds. He was not intending ever to get into a uniform again. This is what they're having to do. They're desperately trying to find anybody anybody with any kind of military acumen to lead, and they're running out of senior leaders. Either they're dying, or they're being sacked, or they're being imprisoned, likewise, they're running out of any veterans, any military people of any kind. And there comes a point where Putin is left just hitting buttons to shoot missiles. And guys, pray that the military bankruptcy would become so evident that the hawks would turn on Putin, and again, the peace party would turn on Putin. And so pray into this midst that a Daniel will arise. A Daniel, a person of righteousness, a person of truth, and a person of justice to bring, because guys, we don't want the entire Russian government to collapse. The amount of suffering will be unimaginable. What we want to see is purification and of this Soviet system, of this that continues to exist there. But in the middle of all of this, guys, you've got to understand the church is arising. The church is arising. The most unreported, beautiful thing that's happening in Ukraine right now is what the church is doing. In the last week and a half even, there has been a massive flip of a switch, if you will, where pastors and churches are rising up and beginning to run to the front, to begin to run to minister. And so much of it is coming from our friends Vladimir and Lilia in the Church Blaga Viest in Dnipro. And they've been able to do it because of your support. They are continuing to go into the occupied territories, continuing to serve the refugees, continuing to plant churches everywhere they go, and they can do it because of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But the need has not lessened. We totally understand it, but if you're feeling led to be a part of that, please consider giving. ariselife.org/help-Ukraine, green button there. The support is desperately needed in this hours. God is multiplying it massively, but he has to have something to multiply, right? You know, the fish, loaves and fishes. I feel like the 178,000 we've sent has really been loaves and fishes that God's multiplied to millions of dollars of resource, of supplies and medicine, and gas and vehicles. That's because God has, he uses what exists, right? The loaves and fishes. And we want to be faithful to provide the loaves and fishes to Vladimir and Lilia, so that God can multiply it on the ground with their volunteers and the churches they're partnering with. And so thank you, thank you, thank you. Your gifts have made a difference. So many of you have told us, as soon as you're giving monthly, or you're waiting till your social security check comes in, you're giving sacrificially. And guys, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You're making a difference. Finally, let me just pray for you. Because God cares about you. He cares about the things that matter to you. He cares about the physical things you're struggling with, the emotional. As we've prayed for people, we've been seeing families reunited, children that have been estranged coming back. We've seen bodies healed. We've seen just financial miracles, because God cares about you. You don't have to fight for him to care about you. You don't have to give money for God to care about you. Do you understand that? You're not buying his love. He loves you. He is for you. So, Father, I ask right now that each person listening would know they're worthy of your love, because you paid the highest price that they might know you by dying on a cross. Thank you, Lord. And I ask right now that this fiery love that you have for them would overcome them in a whole new way, even now. And that whatever they're facing would shrink in their eyes as you are glorified in their eyes. Oh, we love you, Lord. In your name. Amen. Guys, thank you. Hey, listen, I know the ladies had a Zoom mentorship group last night. If you want to be part of the men's group that meets tonight, just say men's group, and Gary Phillips would love to get you the information on that. There's a private Facebook group for men there that he'll invite you to, and there's the details for the Zoom that meets tonight at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time, New York time, and they'd love to have you be a part of that. But listen, as always, I've got about 7 pages of these prayer points. If you're interested, go to ariselife.org/Ukraine. And again, continue to help us get the word out. We've started an Instagram page as well. You can find it, Ukraine Prayer Update. And if you want to help us get the word out there as well, that'd be great. But love you all. Have an amazing day.